Before communicative language teaching dominated TESOL, one method was built around this kind of simple question, which was, what if learners do not need to speak until they are ready? So that question sits at the heart of total physical response, or as we know it, TPR. In this video, I'm going to explain what TPR is, where it comes from, and how it works in the classroom, and why it still matters to TESOL today. Welcome back to TESOL with Mickey and Ida. I'm Mickey, and today we are talking about total physical response. Let's start by thinking, what is TPR? So total physical response is a language teaching approach which was developed by James Asher. The central idea is straightforward. Learners listen to language and respond physically before they are expected to speak. The teacher gives demands such as stand up, sit down, open the door. Students demonstrate understanding through action rather than spoken output. So speaking is delayed, but is not discouraged. Learners begin to speak when they feel ready to do so, rather than being pushed to produce language immediately. Let's think a little bit then about the theoretical background of this approach. So total physical response is influenced by observations of first language acquisition. So children understand a great deal about language long before they actually begin to speak. So they respond physically to instructions for an extended period of time before producing spoken language itself. So Asher argued that second language learners could benefit from a similar comprehension first based approach to language learning. So TPR is also linked to something called trace theory of memory, which suggests that learning is strengthened when it's paired with physical movement. So the physical action helps reinforce memory and comprehension. However, here is a word of warning. You may also hear claims about right brain learning or neurological dominance in discourse about TPR. So these claims should be taken cautiously, as they've been widely questioned by later research. So what we can say more confidently is that combining language learning with physical movement appears to strengthen memory and comprehension, and this is suggested by trace theory and research on motor activity in learning. Let's think then about the key principles of TPR very quickly. So TPR is built on several core principles. So the first one is that comprehension comes before production. So learners are not forced to speak. The second is that listening develops before speaking. So comprehension skills form the foundation for later oral production. Third is that meaning is conveyed through action, not translation. Fourth is that stress is minimized because of delayed speech production and game-like activities. So learners are not immediately evaluated in spoken fluency. And finally, grammar is inductive. So learners internalize patterns rather than explicit explanation. Let's think a little bit then about TPR in the classroom. So a typical TPR lesson follows a clear and structured sequence. The teacher begins by modeling actions while giving commands. So for example, the teachers might say stand up and stands up at the same time. So the teacher also has to be physical in this classroom. Next, the teacher gives commands and learners respond physically. So at this stage, students do not have to speak. Over time, the teacher introduces new vocabulary and longer sequences. So this could be something like stand up, walk to the door, open the door, and then come back. After extended practice, typically around 10 to 20 hours of classes, learners begin to use commands themselves. This stage is known as role reversal. Speaking emerges gradually and naturally rather than being forced. Let's think a little bit then about the strengths and limitations of this method. So TPR has several clear strengths. It is particularly effective with beginners and young learners. It can also really work for learners who experience anxiety and are just not confident about speaking or not ready to speak yet. So why should you go to class and it should be stressful? It just doesn't have to be, and this method can really help with that. This method also really supports listening comprehension and vocabulary development. It creates a low-stress classroom environment. And like I say, that sounds wonderful. However, TPR also has important limitations as well. So it's difficult to use beyond the early stages of language learning. Like, for instance, abstract language like hypotheticals, conditionals, and even extended interaction cannot easily be taught through this method or with these kind of commands that have to be used. So if used on its own, lessons can become quite repetitive, restrictive, and there's probably some people who are just not going to like it at all. For this reason, TPR is best understood as a technique within a wider teaching approach rather than a complete method in itself. Let's think then, why does TPR still matter today? TPR matters because it reminds us of something fundamental. Language learning does not begin with speaking, it begins with understanding. This is so important to remember and something which can clearly be taken from this method. Elements of comprehension, first learning, delayed production, and embodied understanding still influence modern TESOL approaches today. This means that if you're teaching beginners or working with learners who lack confidence, TPR is a method worth revisiting. If you found this episode useful, then please like the video, subscribe, and explore the rest of the TESOL Methods Explained playlist. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.